Welcome back to another episode of Get to the Good Part. My name is Ryan.
I am John.
And today we are discussing Chapter 13 of Ready Player One, a chapter that begins with H clearing the first gate the very following morning.
Yep. We're a third of the way. We're a
sure
third of the way
happen.
through the book.
So the big takeaway for me on this one is that, H clears the first gate, first try, same as Wade.
Yeah. They're probably equal talent levels.
I don't know if that comes from, them working together. They go through great pains throughout the entire book to say that they're solo gunters and they work alone. But really, I mean, at every trial we've seen so far, one of the things that we've seen is that Wade kind of reminisces about things that he's done with H that have helped prepare him for this.
I think it's funny, I wonder if H did the same thing that Parzival did in switching sides, because he doesn't give H that clue or hint. He tells Artemis, hey, why don't you try switching sides? But he doesn't say it to H. If H didn't switch sides, does that mean that H may be a better joust player?
Well, that's a good point. But one of the things that he brings up is that when he played against H in the basement, he always played on that one side.
Yeah.
So, but at the
Just
same
preference.
time, it gave Artemis an advantage. So
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to tell.
Yeah.
It's really hard to tell. That's a good point. So Wade goes back to school the following morning. This is just after clearing the first gate, concerned that his absence might make others suspicious. But when he gets there, over half the teachers and students just aren't at school.
Yeah.
Because this is a fucking holiday, basically. I mean, it's the thing that, some people have thought it's an urban legend up to this point. A lot of people probably thought that this would never happen. And then all of a sudden, boom, you've got 3 people stacked up on the scoreboard. The world is night and day different from what it was, 24 hours prior.
Yeah. He's one of the students that didn't partake in senior ditch day.
Yeah.
That's what it reminded me of.
He's already said he's got the credits to pass, but he just can't miss any school.
Right.
So he's
otherwise
just
they take away his visor and gloves, but does he have enough to pay for new ones or upgrades at this point?
Well, we'll get into
credits?
that a little bit later in the chapter. But as far as that first day back, right now, maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. We know he cleaned up about 20,000 from just looting that room in the Tomb of Horrors. So
Right.
you would think that would be enough to get yourself some haptics and everything.
If that's the only thing that's keeping him from, it's not the only thing keeping him from going to school, because he thought, if I don't show up, maybe they'll know it's me. That's not the case.
Right. And this is something that I kind of got in my notes. I've got blown out a little bit later in the chapter because I don't know. That's a tough one for me to crack. I don't see that. I don't see that that's the primary reason.
Okay.
We'll get into it.
We'll get into it.
We'll get into it. Yeah. Let's just move one thing at a time here. Over half the teachers and students are no-shows, like I said. This sort of confirms something that we touched base on back in the Miss Rank chapter. I say the Miss Rank chapter because if you've been listening to the show, John made a really good point in saying that it's sort of serendipitous that he finds out that the tomb is on Ludus while he's sitting in Miss Rank's class, and Rank seems like a pretty straightforward connection to terminology for a scoreboard.
That's my one pat myself on the back moment.
That'll be your swan song on the podcast, man.
Yeah. If I don't have any more of those moments, we have to reference back to that at the end of the book.
Yeah.
Just the one time that I had something to contribute.
But for the most part, Wade pretty much goes undetected in this in school that day, which isn't really too surprising. He was pretty much undetected before. But he mentions here that his dad would have gotten a kick out of it because it was almost like he had a secret identity like Clark Kent. I think you see the correlation. We've talked a lot about how the first part of the book is almost like an origin story of Parzival as a superhero. You know what I mean?
And now he's become one.
Yeah, this is that moment after Spider-Man stops his first crime or Batman stops his first crime, and it's I have the reason for a secret identity now.
Right. Right.
It's like he's done his first thing. But immediately after this, we've got IROC threatening to blackmail H and Z. Really living up to being a piece of shit here. I mean, every time I see his name in this book, it's just sheer hatred. I'm feeling sheer hatred.
I wanna see him as a comedic relief, but he's definitely looking like a dipshit or a piece of shit.
Right.
And it's even more so here.
Right. And furthermore, I mean, this is the thing that kind of sticks with me in this part of the chapter, is that for all intents and purposes, H has as much background on Parzival as IROC does. I mean, they've spent more time together, so he knows him a little better as a person. He knows his proclivities, but the two things that are important to knowing that the tomb is on Ludus at this point in the book is, one, that Parzival has no money to travel.
Right.
And two, that he goes to school on Ludus. We established that IROC knows both of those things to be true. So H figures it out in minutes, basically. I mean, as soon as he sees him,
almost immediately.
Soon as he comes up on the board, he's like, all right, I can put two and two together. And he's at the tomb, right about the time that he clears that first gate. IROC is blackmailing them because he can't put that shit together himself. Not surprising, because as we saw before, he puts very little effort into the whole thing. He seems like a novice right from go.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if it's that he's not capable of it, but he just his track is not one of a do it yourself. I've got pride in my own work. It's somebody else has this. I need it too, by whatever shady means I can come up with.
Right. I mean, it's like he doesn't care. That scene in the basement is a perfect example. I mean, he's bringing them something that they're already well established. It's well established in Gunter culture. Verse and scripture. I mean, they've got it nailed. As soon as he brings out something to try and stump him, it just doesn't work. But then again, that's why H and Parzival are two of the first three people to clear that gate, because they do know more than most people. So I mean, I don't know if IROC is just like incredibly stupid, or if he's just like your average Gunter. It's kind of hard to tell.
Yeah, it's hard to tell right now. It might be more of a status thing for him, the whole hunt.
Right.
As opposed to H and Parzival really taking it to heart.
Well, as far as statuses go, I'm pretty sure his stat in the basement from now on is going to be persona non grata, because he goes ahead and he goes out and gives all this information out about Parzival and H going to school on Ludus and all that kind of thing. They were hoping that it would kind of get lost in the fuzz, because there's a lot of people talking and saying that they know Parzival and they know Artemis, but, they're kind of full of shit. They were hoping that this would get washed out in the same way, but unfortunately it does not. And a couple days later, you see the first appearance of a couple other Gunters, Daito and Shoto, together known as Daisho.
Obviously a team.
Their names hint at the fact that they are actually a team. Daito and Shoto were the names of two kinds of short swords that a samurai would carry together. If they're carried together, they're known as a daisho. So that's what the public has come to call them, as daisho. But Daito and Shoto, that's really all we know of them, is their names at this point. I was joking with John and Chris before. You've got a culture of people who are obsessed with, the same things that Halliday was into. So it's kind of funny. Like, maybe the world knew enough to call them daisho, but I saw it more as like a fucking benefer. Or something like that. Like they just put the two names together.
Brangelina.
Yeah, Brangelina or Benefer, or, pick your poison.
I don't know any of the other ones.
I don't either. I am not an Us Weekly reader, unfortunately.
But I do think it's interesting that this is a question that I brought up previously. They clear the tomb like one right after another, like 15 minutes between, I think is what he says. So it didn't reset. So I'm wondering how they were able to do that. And I'm hoping I'm glad it gets brought up. I'm hoping it gets answered at some point.
Well, you know, and I don't want to open anything up beyond this point, obviously. But the first thing that came to my mind when I read this part was that if they were working as a team, they probably went in together. Mm-hmm. There's a solo instance at the very end, and that's the joust fight. So I always imagined that they were allowed to go through the tomb together. We know that they can exist in the tomb together, but I wonder if when they reach the Sararak, it splits it off into two solo instances.
Yeah.
So one of their because they would both have to be, if they're going to be up on the board to get separately, they would each have to beat the Lich King. So if they both have to beat the Lich King, then I mean maybe one of their games went a little bit longer than the other. I don't know. It's hard to tell. One of them
won in 2 rounds as opposed to 3 rounds in the best of 3. Something along those lines.
Yeah, that, or you know, maybe it just like kept their bird alive a little bit longer or something like that. That'll open up a little bit in the next few chapters. We'll have another chance to talk about that. And there will be some information that'll kind of give us a little more clarity onto that. So
yeah,
we'll
that's
save
what
that
I'm
as a
hoping
conversation for a different time.
Well, I mean, he points it out too. You know, it's like, they were able to do it, 15 minutes apart without it resetting. I wonder how that happened. So I'm not the only one that is questioning it. Wade is as well.
He's wondering at this point, but we'll get. There's a point in the next couple of chapters that I think kind of opens this up a little bit. I won't say confronts it directly, but we'll get a little bit of clarity on it, and we can kind of rehash it then.
Yeah.
Because it'll make a little more sense then. All right, so here we are, 4 days after the first gate is cleared by Parzival, and now we've got 5 Gunters up on the board who have obtained the copper key and cleared the first gate. This is after 5 years of trying. 5 years. The egg hunt has been a thing, and here we are.
And you know that there's a lot of capable Gunters out there because every one of them passed the first gate on the first try.
Yeah.
Or I'm assuming the first try, because I mean it was a few hours it seems like everybody passed it on the first try. So there are a lot of people that really studied and really dedicated themselves to the hunt. Right.
Yeah, I mean, these are the ones that are kind of filtering out. I mean, if you're imagining like there's a good portion of the world that's searching for this egg, or at least interested, right? So I mean, for 5 people in 4 days, given some additional clue. I mean, like if you've been obsessed with that passage or that clue for years, you would imagine that for the most dedicated, that one extra little clue would be enough to push you over the edge, right?
Yeah, right.
So after 5 years, here we go. This goes back to what Og said, like we were talking about in chapter 12, about, one person can keep a secret, 2 people cannot. You know what I mean? And I don't think he was talking about, I didn't get a chance to talk about this much with you guys. I don't think it's so much about them blabbing their mouths to somebody else when he says that. I think he says that there will be enough information between the 2 people that, that find this, that people will begin to start to, be able to put that together.
Right.
What it does, the levee breaks.
Right. And that was my take too. I didn't think that Wade or Artemis would break as far as disclosing any information, but it's the more that know, the more that know them, and information is just going to get out one way or the other.
Exactly. So Wade's finding it hard to focus on school right now. That's not really a big deal because, like we said, he doesn't really need the credits, so he can just kind of coast right now. But he's got the words of the quatrain stuck in his head as he's sitting there. The quatrain is what he's come to call the clue that he found at the end of the War Games Flick Sync, which goes, "The captain conceals the jade key in a dwelling long neglected, but you can only blow the whistle once the trophies are collected." Now he's kind of spinning his wheels over what the captain means, what the dwelling means, and all this kind of thing. I mean, this is just like the first clue. Without context, it means absolutely nothing. It is just the most mind-boggling thing in the world. But it made me think, and he names off a few different captains as he's trying to figure out who it is.
Right.
And I kind of thought it would be fun to like add to that list. Who does he say? He says like Captain Kangaroo.
Does he say Captain Kirk?
I don't know that he says Captain Kirk.
Well, if he doesn't, then there's my addition. I'm not a Star Trek fan.
You know the one that was missing.
He doesn't say Captain Kirk.
He doesn't?
No. And Captain Kangaroo, Captain America, Captain Buck Rogers.
Yeah, so there's like a whole little sub discussion about who are your favorite captains.
Oh, jeez.
But
Captain Han Solo,
Captain Caveman,
Captain Caveman. That's a good one.
Yeah,
that is a good one.
That was one that kind of came to head.
Yeah, I haven't been able to dive deep into this riddle a whole lot. It means nothing to me.
Yeah.
Right now. but it's good to see this part of the chapter because it means nothing to Wade as well. So I don't feel so like left out.
This is somebody who's so well versed in, in Anorak's Almanac and everything. And like he reads this and he's just like, it is no clearer.
Captain Beefheart.
Captain Beefheart. You can see him being on a playlist for Wade. Maybe. It's experimental a little bit. But anyways, all of our favorite captains aside, he's hung up on that for a little while. And then even more mind-bogglingly frustrating is the dwelling long neglected, because this can mean so many different things.
Yeah.
I mean, in this genre, if you especially if you lump horror into there, I mean, it becomes impossible. The one lead he gets, I think, just to clear it out, for anybody who's reading this book, would probably be like Revenge of the Nerds. Like,
yeah.
He mentions going to the planet Skolnick to see if that house might have been the house. Probably one of the quintessential movie montages of the 80s was the repairing of that house. Planet Skolnick obviously being Louis Skolnick, one of the main characters in the book.
Yeah.
He was played by, I can't remember the actor's name, but his second most famous credit, aside from being in Revenge of the Nerds, I believe he was the dad on Hannah Montana. Or not Hannah Montana, I'm sorry. Whatever. Hilary Duff, she was in it. What was it called? Lizzie McGuire.
Was it? Oh.
Lizzie McGuire. He was the dad in Lizzie McGuire.
You know your Disney. Your modern Disney television.
Oh God! Actually, my son, who's the oldest, is not old enough to justify me knowing who Lizzie McGuire is. That's more back to like my little brothers.
That brings up a few more questions. But
I'm not independently going out and watching this stuff. I promise. I'm pretty sure Lizzie McGuire is like in her mid-30s.
That was a
now.
rough time.
Yeah.
A Hilary Duff phase.
Yeah.
Couldn't get enough of it.
That was not canon. I was just.
Oh wait, so canon. I need to watch Lizzie McGuire.
Yeah.
Catch some hints.
Go out and watch it. Oh God! So the lines drive me crazy, and I kind of know this feeling. You and I have dealt with this kind of same thing before. Writing songs or writing anything really, where you become obsessed with maybe a line or two of something, and it has the power to completely fog your brain from being capable of thought.
Yeah, he might not be focusing on the right part of this riddle, and I don't know. But yeah, he's just getting hung up on one thing, and I mean, like you said, songwriting wise, like if we're stuck on a lyric or a part or a transition, it's just like you're just beating it to death. And sometimes it's this simplest thing
Yeah.
or explanation that you just are overlooking because you're trying to get so deep into it.
So you stand up, you walk away, and a lot of the times you come back, and there the answer is just sitting right in front of you.
Right.
You know, and that's kind of where we land at this point. We kind of transition to outside of his school on Ludus. He's sitting under a tree, and what I would say is like a typical spot you'd find an outcast sitting in from an '80s movie. There always seems to be like an indoor-outdoor theme to high schools in the 1980s. I don't know if that was a thing because I wasn't in high school in the 1980s, but it's just like the cafeteria is outside, or like people are just kicking it outside. It seems like the middle of the day. It's like
yeah, we couldn't go outside.
Yeah, we weren't allowed to go. we would have gotten busted by a cop if we had walked outside of the school.
And we weren't in a dangerous area.
No, we weren't. It was just. But anyways, that's not the case for Wade because he's not even really in the world. He is in the idyllic setting around his school on Ludus, provided by the Oasis. And it sounds pretty peaceful out there. He's sorting through millions. He says millions of messages, and you could probably understand that it would be millions. I mean, there have got to be people reaching out to him, from people who want to know more about how he found it to, as we'll get into, endorsements and companies reaching out to him. One of the things that he reads through is he's getting invited to a lot of the prominent clans around the Oasis, the Gunter clans. Four specifically, the four biggest: Overraptors, Clan Destiny, the Keymasters, and Team Bonsai. Now, Keymasters.
Which one would you join?
Which
you
one
had
would
to
I
join
join?
one of the four.
I mean, Keymasters, I'd be drawn to just because it's Ghostbusters.
Well, yeah, I would too. I would have thought you would have picked
Clan Destiny. Yeah,
we didn't have to bring it up. The book brought it up.
The book brought it
Destiny.
up this time. But and here's the thing: if it were connected to Destiny, of course that would be the one that I would do.
yeah, I know. I would take Keymasters.
Yeah, I'd probably, but I would lean on Keymasters if Destiny had something not to do with Bungie's Destiny. The Team Bonsai, Overraptors. This is a cool one. This is a little bit of an Easter egg in the book from Ernest Cline. I think it kind of points again to the care that he takes in naming some of the things throughout the book. Just the detail. Overraptor is actually a kind of dinosaur. Were I a smarter man, I could tell you what genus and everything like that, but I am not. And I did not include that in my notes. But it does mean egg taker in Latin. So there you go.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So he's getting offers for book and movie deals. And this is something that he's not really interested in. Although you would think that above anything, book and movie deals would kind of be his thing. I mean, he has a chance to enter the pop culture lexicon.
Yeah, well, he does say that he didn't want to have to reveal his identity until after he found the egg. So
right.
he's probably like, let's save these, and get back to them later.
Well, and I have that written down in my notes too because I think it's a really cool point of distinction here. I'm not revealing my identity, at least not until after finding the egg.
Yeah. He does delete them, though.
Yeah, by then,
he doesn't save them.
He's going to kind of have to because, real world Wade, if he wins, would have to step up and take over GSS.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, eventually he'll have to, and I think he understands that. I don't know. There's really not a whole lot to suck out of that line. I mean, we could probably dig into it for a while, but it's it's an interesting point of distinction that he goes into there. Yeah. Now, he is a little bit more interested in these endorsement deals. They're offering him some money. He actually writes back to some of these with a strict rule. I'm only doing this through my avatar. Within an hour, he's getting replies with contracts in them for him to e-sign. And he says, I don't even have time to, or the money to look over it with an attorney. So I just went ahead and signed him.
Yeah, it just seems, it's like, You're showing your age, kid.
Here's a public service to anybody listening. Never do that.
Yeah, I would have taken a little more time to look over it. He's just like, I just can't do it. I'll just sign it. I need the money.
Yeah, and it's not like it's terms and conditions for iTunes, man. It's like this is like you have potential. Right now you have an advantage over just about anybody in the world to go and win $249 billion. You have an advantage over everybody in the world. And that could happen within the year. And they said that all the contracts that he signs expired within a year. Regardless, are you skimming him? Did he say he was skimming? I think he might have said he skimmed him.
I don't. He says he signs immediately. That's what he says. I signed immediately with no lawyer. I mean, you've got a little bit of time. I know you want to get to this riddle, dude, but just escape for a minute and read through a couple pages.
Well, he's probably excited too. I mean, think about it, okay? Here he is, this kid from the stacks, and for the first time, he's being offered. He's getting some attention. I don't think that really phases him too much, but he's getting offered just stacks and stacks of cash, and that's got to be hard to turn down. You know what I mean?
Well, and he says it's not like it doesn't make him rich by any means, but it would, like, the amount of money that he's going to get would take him out of the stacks.
Right. Well, I've got 2 points noted that I want to break that down a little bit.
Okay.
But one last thing about the endorsements thing. There's a part in Mass Effect, which I know you have not played, but
I don't know.
As your character, Commander Shepard sort of gains notoriety from completing missions and things like that. He starts getting hit up when he goes back to the Citadel, which is sort of Incipio in the book. It's like, it's the capital of the Milky Way. And when he goes back, he's getting offers to endorse products and things like that. So they'll just stick a recorder in front of his face and he'll be like, I'm Commander Shepard and I endorse, this type of gun or whatever.
Yeah.
And, that's sort of like, you can choose to do that or you can choose not to. But it reminded me a lot of, how Parzival's using his avatar to gain these endorsements and everything like that. It's sort of, to me, it looked like a callback to Mass Effect. May not have been, but I thought it was kind of cool.
Couldn't he have just waited till, like, he needed the money?
Right.
Like, oh shit, I gotta get off this planet. Let me just put a little money into my sack here and sign a couple deals.
Well, okay, so like I was saying before, he says that this amount of money is not going to make him rich, but it's a fortune to somebody who's lived in the stacks their whole life and doesn't even know what a stack of money looks like. Here's my first question as far as this is concerned. Everybody at school, who sees him knows that he's been wearing a default skin since he started, right? We're talking about Wade, not Parzival. They know that he's just been wearing that default skin. I mean, one of the first chapters of the book is him getting ribbed about for that very thing.
Right.
Now, he's talking about going off to places like Planet Skolnick. Is no one noticing that all of a sudden Wade is, like, leaving Ludus? And I don't know where that sits in the time frame. He might be talking ahead a little bit about going to Planet Skolnick. You know what I mean? But at this point,
I don't know when he did it.
Right. At this point in the book, it's just like, you talk about keeping a low profile by making sure you're going to school and everything like that. But at the end of the day, are you, like, splitting from Ludus? Maybe it just looks like he logs out anyways when he becomes Parzival. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just thought it was kind of an interesting thing.
Or how closely are people paying attention to him if he's such a poor, like, nobody on Ludus? This
is him dipping into the phone booth to rip his shirt off and take off into the Oasis to save lives. But another thing that he mentions, another thing that he mentions here is that his dream of leaving the stacks is about to come true. Thinking about the endorsement deals and how much they're worth, he could probably afford an efficiency apartment in Columbus, which is where he's always wanted to live, a place where GSS is, and the most reliable connection to the Oasis. This is the thing. Given the scope of the Oasis, right? He is basically the world's biggest star. I mean, he is the Michael Jordan of the Oasis right now. And he's signing endorsement deals. It's a question of inflation, I guess, a little bit. Or how much maybe that they're offering him. Maybe they're lowballing him and he's not even negotiating. Because clearly he's not negotiating, so he's probably just taking whatever lowball offer. But seriously, think about it. I mean, he's the biggest star in the Oasis right now. And he's excited about the fact that he can get an efficiency apartment. Now, maybe he's thinking about the rig that he wants to put in there. Maybe he's thinking about, the amount that he's going to have to save to travel all around the Oasis. And, on top of that, just to figure out, the rest of the hunt. Maybe he's budgeting that out, but he doesn't really say. The scary thing is to think about an efficiency apartment being the type of place that a Michael Jordan could afford. He's not going to spend much
time around his apartment, though. I mean, he's going to be logged in. Who cares what your room looks like?
Right, but he's and I'm not saying that that's like the biggest deal. I can understand why he would live in an efficiency apartment to save money and everything. But the fact remains, he's saying I can afford an efficiency apartment. So it's like, how much do those things cost? And we don't really come across that at this part.
When he sends his 3D model of himself and everything, I mean, he could have just said, sent back double it, double the offer,
just to see what happens, or just with one of them.
Yeah,
take the others and then just one of them. Let's just see. How about 4 times that? And then you don't waste my time anymore.
Right, because I've got the hunt to do.
I have something that none of you have. I've cleared the first gate, and I was the first one to do it. But I mean, that who knows what it looks like. It's just, an interesting thought point for me. So this is probably one of the most irritating things that I've read in the book so far. He also separates out the messages from IOI. IOI sent their message over 5,000 times. Okay. Mm-hmm. It was resent once every minute. And they're just mail bombing him to make sure that he gets the message. And the moment that he opens it, it sends a red receipt back to IOI, so it chokes off the constant flow of messages.
Yeah.
That is such an, immediately, if you want to lose my business, do that. That is the most irritating thing in the world.
Well, I don't even answer 800 numbers. If I see a number on my phone that I don't recognize, I'm not even going to frickin' answer it.
But if it's
and he knows who it is,
right?
Just let it go.
And they're just okay, so we got to be delicate. We're the most hated faction in all of the Oasis and probably the world. We want to get this kid's attention to know that he's actually going to respond to us. So what should we do? Well, we can mail bomb the shit out of him, irritate him,
can annoy him,
and basically just kind of cyber stalk him with emails.
I guess it forces him to open it. I guess
fine.
Let's just get this over with.
Right, fine. But it's just it's like you're the most hated group in all of the Oasis. You're just making him hate you more. Let's piss him off. Let's poke the beehive. But I don't know
how much room is left for him to hate them more.
Yeah.
What do they have? Never mind. I don't want to say that. I don't want to say it because it's a line that's used later that I have an issue with.
Oh,
I was gonna say, what do they have to lose? Which is brought up later.
We'll face that down here pretty quick.
Yeah.
So the letter is from Nolan Sorrento. Nolan Sorrento let's talk about him for a little bit, because this is going to be a big figure. You could probably already tell in the rest of the book, John.
Yeah.
It's interesting here. We talked about this in the community episode. By the way, I want to thank everybody who was on that community episode. It was so much fun recording with you guys. Goth Machine, One Amongst the Fence, Paul and Adam. You guys are the best. And we're looking forward to more community episodes coming up in the future, but we'll talk about that later. We did cover in our first community episode the Empire Magazine article with that featured in an interview with Ben Mendelsohn. And in it, he refers to Sorrento as the CEO and head of hardware for IOI.
Okay.
Which is clearly different from what he is in the book. At least at this point, this is what we know. His title in the letter is head of operations. We don't really know anything more than that about Nolan Sorrento, as far as his title and his specific duties within IOI. But toward the end of the chapter, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here, and then we'll kind of tie it back. But toward the end of the chapter, Wade kind of does his homework on Sorrento, and I figured this is a good point to kind of bring up some of the things that he talks about. Sorrento has a PhD in computer science. Prior to becoming the head of operations at IOI, he had been a high-profile game designer. Doesn't say what company he worked for. And he oversaw the creation of third-party RPGs within the Oasis. So it would be sort of akin to them saying that they worked with Blizzard to port all of the World of Warcraft, maps and things like that into the Oasis so people could experience them that way. So he was creating RPGs kind of in that same vein. Wade had played all of Sorrento's games, and he actually enjoyed them. He was a good coder, but he had turned to the dark side. Sorrento was picked up by IOI specifically to lead the quest for the egg. And given his notoriety and background in RPGs, that's not really surprising. That was probably exactly the type of person that they were looking for to lead that up. But still, 5 years later, you've got 5 people up on the board right now and absolutely nothing to show for it. So he's got a little bit of egg on his face going into this conversation. Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's a little bit of a breakdown on Sorrento at this point in the book. It's pretty clear that the Sixers are trying to recruit Wade now. And they're probably going after every single other person that's on the board as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, doesn't it say we'd like you to be the first year offer, and if you don't, then we'll move on. Yeah, so it's likely they're reaching out to everybody who's on the board. I mean, they want a piece of this pie too. They've got a team of just thousands of people working in IOI to find the egg. And it's some scrub kid from the stacks that's beat him to it. And he didn't even need to use money or resources or anything like that. I mean, you think about, for a staff of thousands, each of them are experts in their particular pop culture field, and not a one of them can touch this kid from absolutely nowhere. Yeah.
It's an underdog story.
Right.
We know that. But yeah, they basically, you get the idea here. They're not going to stop until they get information from somebody, whether it's Wade or H or Artemis or whoever. So very surprisingly, Wade decides to go for it and says, there's no harm in just going in there. And he says a line that, when people talk about how they dislike Wade as a character, detractors from the book, this is a line that they bring up a lot that I've seen, is he goes in there, he considers picking up a new skin for his avatar, but says, no, I'm going to roll in there with my default skin and a fuck off attitude. And when people who are detractors of the book talk about why they dislike the writing in it, this is one of the lines they often quote.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought it was fine.
I thought it was kind of, it's an
yeah.
18-year-old kid. This is exactly what he would probably say.
But before that, before he makes that decision, in the email, Sorrento says, and this is, I mean, what villain has not said this at some point? What have you got to lose? Everything, maybe? Everything I've worked for the past 4 or 5 years.
I've got a lot to lose, man.
Yeah.
In fact, I have more now than I did 24 hours ago.
Yeah.
Or however long ago. I mean, like, yeah,
Yeah. Last week, I had nothing.
Yeah. Should have reached out then.
Yeah.
Now?
But now,
so much.
My life.
Everything.
My entire life. Yeah. It's just like, he's like, well, I guess I've got nothing to lose. I'll meet him. Well, I mean, he wants to hear what he has to offer. He's interested. He's like, well, he feels kind of, I don't know, a little full of himself at this point.
Yeah.
Like, IOI wants me.
Well, I mean,
that's a good feeling.
For the past,
it's nice to be wanted.
For a whole chapter, he's going back through and he's reading, fan mail, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, for this part of the chapter, he's going through and he's reading fan mail. His ego, by the time he finally, decides to open up the IOI thing, has got to be through it's a good thing he's outside, because his head probably wouldn't fit through a fucking door at this point. You know what I mean? I mean, this is a kid who, like we said before, I mean, he's right now literally sitting in the back of a van in the poorest part of the country.
Yeah.
And he's reading through millions of pieces of fan mail. I mean, it's got to be just a mind fuck for somebody like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
But
for me, I kind of wish, I mean, if like he says, a fuck off attitude, kind of wish he would have had it at this moment. Just fuck him.
Piss off, man.
I don't need to talk to them.
But regardless, after doing his homework on Sorrento, Wade decides that he's going to sit down with the devil. Hits the chat link invite, and he's on his way to meet Nolan Sorrento.
On his way to chapter 14.
On his way to chapter 14, which we will discuss next week. And damn it, it's a good chapter. John, you've got something to look forward to, man.
Something's bound to happen.
I mean, we'll see. But I don't know if you can even guess what happens, but we won't go into it because I don't want to spoil a damn thing. It's one of the best chapters in the book. For me, honestly, guys, this is probably my favorite chapter in this book. And we're going to have somebody joining us for this chapter, for chapter 14. His name's Willie Simpson. He's the host of the X-Men TAS podcast. You should check it out. It's on iTunes or any place where fine podcasts are found. But we'll be having Willie Simpson join us for that episode. We're really excited to have him. Do you have any closing thoughts?
He just seems really distracted right now. That's the only thing I wish he would kind of just say, fuck off to Sorrento. Let me get to this fucking riddle. And he's showing his age in this chapter quite a bit. So yeah. I'm wavering on whether or not I like his, where his head is at right now.
Yeah.
We'll see if he corrects it.
This is one of those places where having a knowledge of the remainder of the book.
Oh, I'm sure. That's basically been
the first theme of the podcast.
12 chapters is, well, if you knew what happened later, it kind of makes more sense.
Yeah.
Or you would see why it plays out like this.
But at any rate, before we go, I do have a special announcement to share with you, our listeners. This is something we're really excited to do. This is going to be a spin-off of Get to the Good Part. It's It's going to be Get to the Good Part. You know, we're not going to spin off and do another podcast or anything like that. But it should make for a little more content for those of you who can't wait for an episode once a week. It'll fill out some of that time. As you know, we sat down with 4 of our community guests the other day, and it was just a blast. We've actually started a Discord chat between the people who host there and a few other people in the community, just tossing around ideas. And one of the things we discussed was, you know, the quality and the volume of fan fiction we've seen written around Ready Player One. So one of the things that we're going to do is it's not going to be on a weekly basis. It might be bi-weekly or once a month. We're not really sure. We don't have it nailed down yet. But we're going to sit down with our community hosts, Goth Machine, Paul, Adam, One Among the Fence. You're going to see those guys come back. And instead of doing a chapter of the book, we're going to do a chapter of fan fiction. We're going to ask the person who wrote that fan fiction to come on, and we're going to discuss what's in that fan fiction. We're going to post that fan fiction with the episode so people can read it, and then they can come in and they can listen to us talk about it with the person who wrote that fan fiction. Just kind of, you know, think of it as Get to the Good Part for the things that you guys are creating. And it doesn't have to be fan fiction. It can be some other things. So we're really excited about that. It's going to be pretty cool. We've gotten a lot of great feedback from you guys listening about how those community hosts did. And, you know, I think they all really appreciated it. So thank you very much for giving us your feedback on that. The other thing, too, I want to remind everybody, we are planning to release a basically audio play of Andy Weir's Lucero chapter. I won't go too much into detail on that since John can't really earmuffs me right now. Please don't. Yeah. But we're basically going to do. We're inviting people to send us clips, examples of them doing readings of one of the characters from the book, or multiple characters if you like. Send us. You know, you can record it in GarageBand or whatever. Whatever software you prefer. Send us an MP3 of a clip of that as a test, so that we can kind of hear, and we'll see if you guys, if you have kind of what we're looking for, we'll reach back out and we'll work with you. But send us a Dropbox link with that audio clip as an example. And hopefully we can put this thing together in the next couple months. We're really excited about it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. But other than that, that pretty much ties it up for our announcements. It's a lot of news all at once, but just some things we're kind of doing on the side to fill out content and give you guys something else to listen to as we wait for March 30th, 2018, when this movie finally freaking comes out. I know we're all excited for it. But John, do you have anything else to
add? No, I do not.
Okay, well then, without anything further, from the Peanut Gallery, we'll see you next week for Chapter 14. Until then, I'm Ryan.
I'm John.
So long.